Oh, by the way, you're in my street. Let me see if I can tilt this a little more. So you're not there, so you can stand up over there. There we go, that's better. You're out of it now. Sorry, captured the hubby. Now that we're done with the other case for a minute, we can get on to some nice history cases, like the case of Lizzie Borden. I've been brushing up on her case again lately. Found some interesting themes. But I still kind of stand by my one original why I wanted to do this video. Couple of things why I like Lizzie's case, because as like I wrote in the description, whenever you are charged with something, you suffer. Hey, there's my gamer. No, I haven't gone to court yet. Give me an hour, couple hours. But I should be fine, hopefully. So I gotta go in a little over an hour. I got a little over an hour. The harsh thing about our justice system, yes, let's get back onto that road. The harsh thing is you have charges work in several different ways. First, the police charge you, and then they send your story to the prosecutor. And a lot of the times, the story they send to the prosecutor sometimes isn't the story that you thought you were charged with. Sometimes you get a surprise when you go to court, what you're charged with. And I got some stories on that. I probably won't. Hopefully it's just signing some papers. And that's it. Cementing in the deal and signing papers. And generally what the public knows about your case is what's written in the court documents, what you're being charged with, and that's what goes out into newspapers, and that's what goes out into the public. And that's what people know about your case. Newspaper people, they don't go interview police, they don't go interview the suspects, they don't go out and actually do detective work. They read the court documents, they go sit in court, which is a game in itself. And so really there's certain things that can be said once you enter into court, and the real story never gets to be fully said in court because the way court is designed. I hate the way court's designed because you can't treat the judge like a regular person or your probation officer or police officer or anything, and just candidly tell them your side of the story and stuff. And it's a game. It's all a game. And that's what people report on. They report on what they hear in these cases and what's said in the courtroom, which very little nice things get said about the defendant. Like, very little, if any. Like, because you're not allowed to. And nothing mean is like, okay, so like nothing nice can be said about the defendant and nothing mean can be said about the prosecution side. So that's what also trips up court is whoever's prosecuting you, whether it be the state, a relative, a friend, somebody you know, you cannot put anything mean up, negative, to paint them in a negative light. but you can paint the defendant in as much of a negative light as you want. And nothing nice has to be said about them. The only thing that's nice said about the defendant was what comes from your lawyer. And then people even question that. And it just depends on how honest you are with your lawyer and stuff, too. Because, yeah, I still can't get that video out of my mind of Gypsy Rose laughing about, I wasn't even honest with my own lawyers. And it's like, that's the number one person you could be honest with. That needs the honesty. Because they need to know what negative things are going to come from the other side. They don't want surprises. They want to know it prior. They want to know what's coming at them. So you have to tell all the truths you can so that you don't get your own lawyer blindsided in the middle of this court game. And then it doesn't matter. I mean, it matters for the defendant if you're found guilty or innocent. Because if you're found innocent, as in Lizzie Borden's case, you go home and you go free. If you're found guilty, you go back to prison. And in the case of Lizzie Borden, she was found innocent, yet that's not the way the public held her. And here's one question I would have liked, that if the cops would have been smart enough to check it out, could have answered for me whether Lizzie was guilty or not. But a full investigation, maybe cops don't think of everything when they're investigating, because right then and there on the crime scene, there is one way to tell how guilty Lizzie is. They checked her for blood on her. They checked everybody. They found nobody with blood on them, because this was very messy scenes in the home. By the way, tomorrow I'll be able to play the whole... Are you gonna just play it straight through? I'm slowly playing it. Hey, Joshy. You can play it straight through. Could get emotionally tasking. Just kidding. I might have to play it 3 times over to see what kind of mistakes there are to make. Still in the middle of fixing season 1. But I went on to season 2 anyways, and making my mistakes there too. Show her friend. Okay. No, what happened was her friend came over and she was ripping up a blue dress. Lizzie said it had paint on it. The friend never looked at the dress. And Lizzie was burning it in a fire in pieces. But nobody ever said they saw Lizzie change clothes that day. Maybe 1 or 2 people said she might have been in a blue dress and then she was in a pink dress later that day. But she did not change clothes between the time her dad came home and the cops arrived. We do know that. So, Lizzie had changed clothes. Back then, in the 1800s, you didn't change clothes a lot because you didn't have washing machines. And so, you tried to keep yourself as clean as possible all day long. And no, when you get paint on something, yeah, there's no way to wash it out. And blood too. Blood's probably really hard to wash out in cold water, because I did find out that the Borden home did have plumbing in certain rooms. Not every room, just the kitchen, the downstairs cellar, and they did have an outhouse. that was out in the back garage or something. But it was cold water. They didn't have hot water, and if they needed hot water, that would have had to been boiled on the stove. So they still took baths out of bowls of hot water. It's not like they got a nice hot shower. So if you like cold showers like you guys do, most likely if you wanted fresh running water, you were going to get cold water. Thank you, gamer. Love them to you. They look nice. These ones are staying on too. But the question I want answered is, so back in this time, in the 1800s, men and women were very different and had very different roles. And this was normal. This is what people are fighting nowadays, that men and women have different roles. But back then, men and women had very distinct roles. Women did not do hard labor stuff. They did the cooking, the cleaning, the shopping, stuff like that. And men did all the hard labor stuff. And now the Borden home did have fireplaces and stuff where you would need wood to burn on these stoves. And so somebody, and I don't think Andrew would, I don't know if he would have allowed his daughters to do this. I know that he allowed Lizzie to come to work with him and learn business, but that's a little bit different than hard manual labor. But either Andrew did it himself, or he was 70 years old at the time of his passing. I'm wondering if he hired out for somebody to chop this wood or bought already chopped wood. But they did have like 3 axes on the property, which means somebody must have been chopping wood. But I don't imagine Emma letting Lizzie go out there and chop wood. Because basically from the time Lizzie was 2.5 years old when her mother passed and Emma was 12, Emma became Lizzie's mother until Andrew married Abby, and then Andrew sent Emma away to school because Emma did not like Abby, and Abby was trying to form a relationship with Lizzie, which was going well. Lizzie was calling her mom, and Emma was trying to get in the way of that. Like, if anybody had the most hatred for Abby, it was Emma. And they don't talk much about Emma. There is one theory that Emma might have, that's why she left for the day. Because she knew that the unalivings were going to happen. However, she didn't want to be a part of it, and she took off. So anyways, back to the wood chopping thing. Now, Abby had been struck 19 times and Andrew 11, so that's a total of 30. And there's 2 things about these. First of all, that's a lot of hits, especially for a first-time person doing it which might explain a 90-minute break if Lizzie did do it, because your hands would be hurting after 19 times. Because your first time using an axe or something, that would hurt. And you could get splinters. And that could... Well, also Andrew wasn't home, but Andrew was home for about 40-ish minutes before he was attacked. But 30 times is a lot. That would hurt your hands, because females' hands are often softer than male hands, and you could tell how much manual labor somebody does just by looking at their hands, because their hands would be calloused and weathered. And I mean, just look at my hands, you can tell I don't do any hard work. They're soft, they're smooth, there's no calluses. You can tell I don't even play guitar. They're not even, my fingertips are not calloused. I tried playing guitar, but even though there's 3 sitting behind me, it takes a lot of calluses to learn how to play guitars. Your fingertips would be hardened and calloused from hard work. And so men often did the hard work, and it aged their hands, and it calloused their hands. And if the cops had just looked at Lizzie's hands, not just looked at her and said, okay, she looks clean, can't possibly be her. Because with the lack of hot water and the lack of plumbing everywhere in the home, because there was no plumbing upstairs to clean up. I mean, Lizzie had a hard time getting her irons heated up that morning to iron her handkerchiefs. And the other thing is if Lizzie wanted to... If Lizzie's plan was all along to unalive her dad, then why, after her dad came home, did she ask Bridget the maid to go shopping with her for linens? They were having a linen sale, and Lizzie wanted to go get some new linens. But the maid said she was still sick from the day prior and wanted to go upstairs and lay down in her bed. And Lizzie's dad was unalive like 5-10 minutes later. Lizzie just decided to go straight out, grab a few pears, and go straight out to the barn and go look for some lead weights for her fishing pole. So somebody who's planning on unaliving their parent doesn't go, well, I want to go shopping first. So it is kind of a strange question that Lizzie did ask Bridget, that she's like, hey, let's go shopping. Because had Lizzie gone shopping, she would have been alibied at least for one of the unalivings. She would have been with Bridget at the store at the time. And they would have came home. And also a couple other weird things happened that day. Like the front door being jammed shut. Something that never happened. Andrew was unable to enter his home. It was jammed shut. So somebody might have been in the home jamming doors. And if you look at the layout of the house, there is a perfect way somebody could have hid up there for 90 minutes. First, yes, they could have stayed hidden in the guest room, which was John's room at the time. Nobody would have gone in John's room. Had the door been closed, they wouldn't have gone in there. They didn't have a close relationship with John. It's not like you knock on John's door and be like, hey, you want to talk? You know, they weren't very sociable in the Borden home. I mean, John even said that he didn't see Lizzie the whole first day he was at the Borden home. because they didn't just be like, oh, our uncle's here, John, yay. And John was there to do a business deal with Andrew, and they were supposed to meet back at the home at noon. And what do you know, Andrew died just before lunch when that business deal was supposed to happen. Because Andrew did arrive home early. But I wish they had taken a look at her hands. They could have told a lot of the story of Lizzie, whether she was skilled, because whoever did these was also skilled, because all 11 blows, especially to Andrew, were done in the same exact spot over and over and over again. It wasn't frantic, it wasn't messed up, it wasn't all over the place. One spot every time. For Abby, but on both Abby and Andrew, it was the first blow that did the unaliving, because the first blow hit that hard on both of them. Abby was immediately knocked out down to the floor, and the other 18 hits were complete overkill on her. The only thing that says that Lizzie possibly had knowledge that this was going to happen was the fact that Abby was unalived first for a very good reason. See, had somebody killed Andrew and then later Abby, see, the second Andrew dies, his fortune passes to Abby, his wife. And then if Abby dies after that, her fortune passes to her family, bypasses the Borden family. So the Borden family loses their fortune unless Abby goes first. That's the only reason why Emma and Lizzie got the fortune, was because it was obvious that Abby went first by at least an hour. And so therefore the fortune, once Andrew passed away, passed to the Borden family, which was his two daughters, which surprisingly there wasn't a rule against daughters, I guess, because usually it has to be a male heir, which maybe the uncle did it. Maybe the uncle did it because he thought the fortune was going to pass to him. And he just spent 1 year living with a butcher family in Massachusetts prior, and then he comes up to the Borden home, and the next day both Abby and Andrew are unalived, just after he spends a year living in, because they don't know if it was an axe or a butcher's cleaver, because they can't find a definitive murder weapon. They can't find the weapon. So it was an axe-like. It was an axe-like, and all the axes found in the Borden home were cleared of being the weapon. Fur, there you are. Welcome in. So how much do you know about the Lizzie Borden ones? I'm going over who we think it is, because there's the possibility that the uncle just got done living with the family of butchers, so he spent a year being a butcher prior to this, so he definitely had the strength to do it, the accuracy to do it. However, he kind of is out alibied unless somebody lied for him. Because the Bordens had a lot of family in Fallbrook where they lived. Or Fall Haven, or... and he was visiting one of the cousins at the time. And so that's why they never pinpointed it on John, because he supposedly has a good alibi. It's Bridget and Lizzie who don't have the alibis. They don't have the alibis. Therefore, however, I did find out that Bridget, after all of this went down, Lizzie's lawyers paid for her to go back to Ireland, and she was paid a sum of $1,000. And back then in the late 1800s, in 1892 when this happened, that was worth like $28,000. So that wasn't, $1,000 was not no little sum to be paid out. And then she later came back to the U.S., but a different state, like Nebraska or something like that, and got married. And she had one small deathbed confession that she lied about something for Lizzie in court or something. She didn't give any details. She did say that she knew that something was false about Lizzie that she lied about. And so she did help Lizzie out a little bit in court. But she didn't say that, oh yeah, me and Lizzie, we were in on it. We did it. And that's why I was paid off. And because Emma is perfectly alibied, nobody talks about her and any kind of involvement except for maybe knowledge. Because 5 years prior to this, like I said, Lizzie used to call Abigail mom up until Abigail had some family. So in the city they lived in, you had the city where the poor people lived, and then you had the hills where all the rich fancy society was. And all the Borden cousins and families lived up in the hills because their money was passed down family money. And they spent money like crazy. Now, Andrew wasn't privy to this Borden money for some reason, and he actually had to earn his fortune. And when he passed away, he was worth $300 million, or no, $300,000, which is about $9-10 million now, which isn't a bad fortune, and especially at that time. But that was all hard earned by Andrew himself. Whereas the rest of his family that lived up in the hills and partied a lot and drank champagne and blah, 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 they did invite Lizzie up for some of it, the day events, but the evening events, because Lizzie did not live up in the hills, was not part of the evening society part of it. Hey, Britio. And so basically, Abby had some family that did live up there, and whoever owned the home passed away, and her family had nowhere to go, and they were going to get kicked out, and she talked Andrew into buying their home. And Andrew bought the home so that the family could remain there. And Lizzie stopped calling Abigail mom at that time because they felt like Andrew was giving Abby's family the life that they were begging for. Except for, I mean, the only thing Abby and Lizzie missed out on was the nightlife of the socialites, because they lived in the city, and so they didn't get to have their coming out balls and coming out parties and coming out into society and get properly given away and married. Instead, at this time, Abby's a 32-year-old spinster. And when you're 32 years old, that's how Andrew married Abby, because Abby was in her 30s, had no children, was considered a spinster, and Andrew just needed somebody to look after his two daughters. He already had the great love of his life. He didn't need a great love. He just needed somebody to be a mother to his daughters. And so that's why he married. That's all spinsters are good for, if you get lucky. So Abby, the only reason she married Andrew was because he was rich, and that was the best she was ever going to get as a spinster. However, the Bordens did have a vacation beach home, and Andrew bought his daughters new dresses all the time, and pretty much anything they wanted except for a home on the hill. That was the only thing Andrew ever denied his daughters. Was he didn't deny them education. He didn't deny them anything they wanted except for that home on the hill in high society. That was the only thing he ever denied them. And is that worth getting rid of your parents over because you're denied that home on the hill? I mean, people, the reason why they want to say yes and held Lizzie guilty even after being found innocent is because one of the first things her and Emma did do was go buy that home. I don't know why they did that. I guess they finally wanted to live in high society, but by this point in their lives, so much of their lives had passed by that it did them no good to live in high society at this point. Because back in that time, it wasn't enough. Money wasn't enough to put you in high society. It was the neighborhood you lived in too. And that's what upset the Borden sisters. That's where Lizzie started hating Abby, was Abby's family got what she wanted. They got to remain living in this high society off of their father, not off of their own hard-earned money or family money, off of the Borden family money. Now, one of the reasons they could have done it, why they would want to unalive their father, is maybe they saw more of their fortune. Because Abby was able to talk Andrew into, Lizzie often accused Abby of manipulating their father into things. Like buying that home up on the hillside for her family. It had plumbing, it had everything. It had everything the girls wanted. Basically, they didn't want any more of their father's fortune going to Abby's family, so therefore there's only one way that Abby and Emma could get a hold of the fortune, and that would be to... And Gamer, to answer your question, she was trying to buy the cyanide the day of the unalivings. However, if you're going to unalive them by axe, why buy cyanide? But apparently this prussic acid or something is what it was called, is also, they had upset stomachs. And Lizzie already thought someone was trying to poison them, so she was trying to get a hold of this thing that she thought would help heal their stomachs. Because Lizzie went to the doctor earlier that day saying, somebody's trying to poison us. The whole family is sick. The whole family. And Lizzie, prior to this, had already told a friend a couple days prior to this, I think somebody's coming after my dad, my family. And Lizzie had already felt in danger, so by the time everybody had showed up sick, She was thoroughly paranoid that somebody was actually going through with it with poison. Maybe, you never know, maybe it was Abby's family trying to get a hold of more of that fortune. Because I'm sure they still needed more money after that home was bought. I'm sure that, and maybe that's why the girls saw their dad's fortune going to Abby's family, and they were like, okay, this has got to stop, and there's only one way to stop it. We got to have the fortune, and so dad's got to be gone. But like I said, all this I think could have been solved if they did a more thorough look of Lizzie and her hands, and her hands could have told a story that day that her clothes and hair and everything didn't tell. Because maybe she did wash up really well. Maybe she did do it, and maybe she did wash up really well, even in cold water. And maybe that is why she burned the dress. It wasn't covered in paint. Because where was there red paint on the property? I don't know. Nobody, Lizzie never explains where the red paint on the property was that she brushed up against. Or even if it was red paint. Nobody saw the stain on the dress. They just saw her ripping the dress and burning the dress. And her friend later told her, that looks really bad that you burned a dress a couple days after your parents. And the cops want to see all of your dresses. And you just burned one. Because the cops went through all of Lizzie and Emma's closet. They had a giant walk-in closet with all of their dresses hung up. And the cops did go through every dress one by one, because they knew that whoever did this did not come out of this clean. And that there's got to be a dress that proves that they changed their clothes once, maybe even twice that day. There's got to be one or two dirty dresses. So, yeah, that was bad that she chose that time to burn the dress, because you could tell the difference between paint. Paint stays vibrant on fabrics, whereas the other does not stay very vibrant. So she didn't have to burn the dress if it truly was paint. Paint is crusty and thick and vibrant, whereas it keeps its vibrancy, whereas the other would be thin and it would soak into the fabric and is more pliable, and it would darken. It would turn to a brownish color. It wouldn't remain its vibrant red. So even on a blue dress, it would lose its vibrancy. Ugh, my eyes. This is like, there's two cases that I'm going to talk about, another case in a few days here, that it's hard to tell where the innocence and the guilt lies, because there's partial alibis in the stories, and the alibis are pretty darn good. But there's also some bad luck in there that says, well, they could have done it, because still, wrong place, wrong time at the same time. And some lies in there. Stories changed, lies were told. Like oh man, that's why the second you're accused of a crime, you shut up, you lawyer up. Innocent or guilty, it doesn't matter. Even if you're innocent, you lawyer up because you only want to tell your story once, if you can help it. Especially if you're innocent, because innocent people's stories can change. Details over time. That's why in America you have a right to a speedy trial, so that time does not pass by and stories are forgotten. Details are missed or forgotten. They want you to remember everything as if it's that day again. You're reliving the day again. So you have a right to a speedy trial so that your memory, because some people in other countries don't see court for like 5 years. And when you don't see court for 5 years, details slip. Things get forgotten, and it could come off that you're lying. Stories can change in that time. Our memories aren't perfect. And it depends on the trauma in the moment, how much also your mind allows you to remember. And sometimes your trauma can skew your memory. Because somewhere between memory and imagination and trauma, things can get skewed. And so that's why they tell you, as soon as you are charged with a crime, write down your story immediately in every detail that you can think of. And put that away. Because you want to write down your story right as it's completely fresh, where you remember every tiny detail. And I know I've had to do this a couple times in my life. It sucks. I've had to sit there and type up my side of the story and put the story away for my own keeping, just in case something changed in my memory or something later down the road, or something was forgotten. Because like right now, it's been 7 years since I got in that fight with Dawn's parents, and I cannot remember the words Dawn's mom said to me that night. Like, the whole year I was being charged with the crime, I could tell you every detail of it. But now 7 years later, I'm going to have to go look at my own story. Even if I still have it. I don't even know if I still have it. But for the life of me, I cannot remember what she repeatedly said to me that night. And it kills me because I'm like, oh my gosh, this was a big part of my story. It was a big part of my story of why I didn't leave when I was told to leave, and why I got charged with trespassing. Because everybody asked me, why didn't you leave, Rose? Because I wasn't told straight up to leave. I was told, and I can't remember it now, and it was the biggest part of my story. And it's now slipped my memory. I have no idea what she said to me. I would have to go back now and look at court transcripts and stuff, and to see the exact wording and to see what she said, because I don't think I still have the story anymore. I've switched computers so many times in the last 7 years that unless Dawn downloaded that story to our main hard drive that we carry with us. I mean, we switch computers, but we do have a main hard drive. Unless that story's on there, I probably gotta go pull court transcripts again. And that's a long court transcript, because if you get it on a CD, audio CD, it's a 6-hour trial. That was a long day. And yeah, I can't to this day remember what the biggest part of my story was. When people ask me, why didn't you leave? I had an answer for it, but I don't anymore. I can't remember. And so if 5 years had gone by, I would have either had to remind myself that story every single day, or yes, it would come off as I'm lying and she never said that to me, because now all of a sudden I can't remember what was said to me. The biggest part of my story, I can't remember what was said to me, because I've gone on with everyday life and let it slip my mind, and I don't remember it anymore. I don't remember what was said to me that day. I can only remember bits and pieces of the conversation that I had with Dawn's mom now. I only know bits and pieces of our conversation. And so that's why we have trial within 6 months, 6 to 9 months of you get into trial very quickly, so that doesn't happen to you and then you're like come off as a liar. All right, well, we can skip over to Twitch for probably 40-ish minutes till around 12:50-ish. Unless you guys have any other questions. Last chance to ask any other questions about the case, or I'm gonna have to do another video on it. Damn it. Just kidding. Alright, we'll go over to Twitch for a minute while I wait for these next 40 minutes to pass by. Thank you guys for watching, and let me know in the comments like what you think of my addition is to the story. Like I said, I think the police could have told a lot about Lizzie if they just looked at her hands and actually thought about it for a minute. I think you could tell somebody who just picked up an axe for the first time and did 30 really hard, accurate hits. Nobody ever talks about, they talk about her clothes and her hair and her face and everything being clean, but nobody ever talks about, I want to know what her hands look like. So that's why it was kind of funny that I found that photo for the thumbnail of the hand reaching up like this, and I put the words right there underneath the hand, because I'm like, right there, there's your answer to if Lizzie physically did it or not. It still doesn't answer the question, did Lizzie know? Was she compliant, at least in knowledge, but not the actual action? But her hands would have gave the story how compliant she would have was in the action. Because like I said, just look at your hands. I've tried to use a hatchet before once when I was a teenager, and well, I barely even struck that tree. There's no way I could chop down anything with a hatchet. But my boyfriend, yeah, he could. It's like, okay, he can use the hatchet. Me, nah, I'll just go over there and do something else. but I think our hands can tell a lot about us. And I wish I knew what her hands look like. I want to know what her hands look like. All right, we'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching my videos and commenting and liking and stuff. And it just, every time I see a new like, I just, thank you guys, my YouTube community. Love you guys, and love your comments too. And I check it often during the day so that I can have time to answer you back. I try and answer people back. Unless I think it's going to cause an argument. If I don't answer you back, it's because it's not that I didn't read your comment. It's that if you left one that I can see can be very argumentative, I'll just let you have your comment, and I'm not gonna start an argument. So you know you're walking right behind my video.